The morning mist hung low over the rolling hills of Willow Creek Valley as 34-year-old Catherine Brooks parked her rental car at the edge of what her GPS had optimistically labeled as a road. Her tailored charcoal business suit and designer heels were perfectly appropriate for the Manhattan investment firm where she normally spent her days, but completely impractical for walking across a muddy field to assess agricultural property. Catherine was a senior partner at Brooks Capital Management, specializing in distressed asset acquisitions for her family's investment fund. She had driven 3 hours from the city to evaluate a failing organic farm that her company was considering purchasing at auction. The property represented exactly the kind of undervalued rural real estate that typically yielded substantial profits when converted to residential development. As Catherine carefully navigated the rutted farm road in her impractical shoes, she could see why the previous owners had struggled financially. The infrastructure appeared run down, several outbuildings needed significant repair, and the farmhouse itself looked like it had not been updated in decades. From a purely financial perspective, the land was worth far more as building lots than as agricultural property. What Catherine had not expected to encounter was evidence that someone was still actively working the land. As she approached the main field, she could see a man operating a small tractor, methodically tending to rows of what appeared to be vegetables. Given that the property was scheduled for auction in 2 weeks, his presence was both surprising and potentially problematic. The man noticed her approach and shut off the tractor engine, climbing down to meet her. He appeared to be in his late 30s, with dark brown hair and the kind of tan that came from years of outdoor work. His flannel shirt and worn jeans showed the practical dress of someone who worked with his hands, but there was something about his confident posture and direct gaze that suggested intelligence and determination. "Good morning," he said as Catherine approached. "I am Ethan Parker. Are you here about the property auction?" "I am Catherine Brooks," she replied, accepting his offered handshake. "Yes, I am here on behalf of an investment group that is considering bidding on the farm. I have to say, I was not expecting to find anyone still working the land." Ethan nodded with what appeared to be resigned understanding. "I have been leasing this property from the Henderson family for the past 3 years, growing organic vegetables for local restaurants and farmers markets. When they decided to sell, I tried to arrange financing to purchase it myself, but the banks were not interested in lending to a small-scale farmer." Catherine studied Ethan's face, noting the disappointment and frustration in his expression. "I am sorry to hear about your financing difficulties. That must be very discouraging after investing so much work in the operation." "It is what it is," Ethan replied with quiet dignity. "I know that investors like your group can offer cash deals that individual buyers cannot match. I just hope whoever purchases the property will consider keeping some of it in agricultural use." Catherine felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for Ethan's situation. "What would you do with the farm if you were able to purchase it?" Ethan's expression brightened as he described his vision for expanding the organic operation, adding greenhouses for year-round production, and creating educational programs for urban consumers interested in learning about sustainable agriculture. "The soil here is exceptionally productive," Ethan explained as they walked through the fields together. "With proper investment in infrastructure and marketing, this could be a highly profitable agricultural operation while also serving the growing demand for locally sourced food." Catherine found herself genuinely impressed by Ethan's knowledge and passion. His business plan was more sophisticated than many of the proposals that crossed her desk at the investment firm, and his understanding of market trends was remarkably astute for someone without formal business training. "You clearly have a comprehensive vision for this property," Catherine observed. "Have you considered seeking alternative sources of financing?" "I have explored every option I can think of," Ethan replied honestly. "Traditional agricultural loans require more collateral than I possess, and most private investors are not interested in farming operations that do not generate immediate high returns." As they continued touring the property, Catherine realized that Ethan had transformed what appeared to be a failing farm into a productive and well-managed operation. His improvements to the soil, water management systems, and crop rotation had created significant value that was not reflected in the property's auction price. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" Catherine said as they stood overlooking the main production area. "If you had access to adequate capital and business support, what kind of returns do you think this operation could generate?" Ethan considered the question carefully before providing detailed projections based on market demand, crop yields, and expansion possibilities. His analysis was thorough and realistic, suggesting potential profits that were actually competitive with many traditional investments. That evening, Catherine sat in her hotel room reviewing financial projections and making calculations that had nothing to do with residential development. For the first time in her career, she was considering an investment that would preserve rather than transform rural property. The next morning, Catherine returned to the farm to discuss a proposal that surprised even herself. "Ethan, I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I want to suggest a different kind of arrangement," Catherine said as they sat on the farmhouse porch. "Instead of my company purchasing this property for development, what if we formed a partnership to purchase and expand the agricultural operation?" Ethan stared at her with amazement. "Are you serious? Your investment group would be interested in farming?" "I am serious," Catherine replied. "You would provide the agricultural expertise and day-to-day management, while my company would provide the capital for land purchase, infrastructure improvements, and business development. We would structure it as a partnership with shared ownership and profits." "But why would a Manhattan investment firm want to get involved in organic farming?" Ethan asked, clearly struggling to believe the offer was genuine. Catherine smiled, thinking about how much her perspective had changed in just 2 days. "Because you have convinced me that sustainable agriculture can be both profitable and socially beneficial. My family's fund is always looking for investments that generate strong returns while creating positive impact." 6 months later, as Catherine stood in the renovated farm store watching customers from the city purchase fresh vegetables directly from Ethan's expanded operation, she reflected on how a routine property evaluation had led to the most rewarding investment of her career. The partnership had exceeded all projections, with the farm's direct-to-consumer sales, restaurant contracts, and agritourism programs generating returns that rivaled traditional real estate development. More importantly, the project had preserved productive farmland while creating sustainable employment for rural residents and providing urban consumers with access to locally grown food. Catherine had discovered that splitting her time between Manhattan and Willow Creek Valley gave her a perspective on business and life that purely urban experience could never provide. Her relationship with Ethan had evolved from professional partnership to personal connection, built on mutual respect for each other's expertise and shared commitment to creating enterprises that benefited everyone involved. Their engagement was announced at the farm's first annual Harvest Festival, attended by investment colleagues from the city and farming neighbors from the valley, all celebrating the proof that rural and urban interests could be successfully aligned through genuine partnership and innovative thinking. Catherine had learned that the most profitable investments are often those that create value for entire communities rather than extracting it for distant shareholders. And Ethan had discovered that not all investors are interested only in maximum short-term returns, and that sometimes the most meaningful business relationships develop when people are willing to see beyond traditional categories and explore new models of collaboration.